Jakubik, who's an active visiting scholar, United Kingdom, USA, Italy, France, Spain, Austria, Lithuania, Hungary, and now Florida. And conference participant, Uram, UK, Estonia, Poland, Edinev, the Netherlands, ESM, Cyprus, MIC, Croatia, Italy, and of course WMSCI, USA, and Finland. Our research interests focus on knowledge management, employee engagement, action research, appreciative inquiry, I think that's what you're speaking about, and organization development. Our research papers have been published in the Journal of Knowledge Management, the International Journal of Learning and Intellectual Capital, Journal of the Learning Organization, Review of Innovation and Competitiveness, a Journal of Economic and Social Research. Maria has 2 PhDs, unlike the others who spoke before who had 1 PhD. 1984 in Hungary and 2011 in Finland, and an MBA in Finland and the USA. And the title of her talk is Flourishing Organizations. Yes, yes. So, speak, and as I said, we have 2 models now.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. It was really great.
And I enjoyed having dinner with her last night.
Yes, yes. So, as you know, learning requires body, mind, and spirit. So I would like to ask you to stand up a little bit and stretch out. Because I saw many of you are very, very tired. Because we started early morning at 7:40 something. I think we need some movement. So please, stretch out, do some exercise, please. Okay. Some even almost fell asleep, but so I want you a little bit move. Body, mind, and spirit. So please remember. Okay, well, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. So my topic, I don't know if it works well. Does it work? Okay. So my topic is flourishing organizations. It doesn't relate, this topic doesn't relate any quantitative analysis, neither engineering and software development or nothing like that. So I think it's very different. I'm going to focus on 3 issues. Actually, I would like to simplify my presentation into 3 points. So after introduction, I would like to talk a little bit about debating views of organizations and how organizations could develop. And then appreciative inquiry. I would like to know how many of you are familiar with appreciative inquiry. Great. That's really good. So appreciative inquiry as type of action research. And then number 3, sharing appreciative inquiry experiences of my students. They did project work, and then I would like to share the results or the outcomes. And then closing and questions. Okay, I would give you 2 tasks to think about during the presentation. Number 1, think about who is the most well-known Finnish individual or person. This is number 1. Number 2, identify at least one idea what you will take away from this presentation. Okay, think about one idea or something what was new for you. Okay, we will come back at the end to these 2 questions. Okay, first of all, I would like to know who you are. So are you engineers? Okay. Yes, so this topic will be very different. Are you in education? Okay. Are you in consulting business? Good. Very few, actually. Are you in business, doing real business? Only 2 or 3, 4. That's great, yeah. Okay. So hopefully there is something also for you or some new ideas you can benefit from. I would like to introduce, as an introduction, a little bit Finland and then the university I came from Helsinki. The university name is Haaga-Helia University of Applied Sciences. This is applied sciences, so we are focusing on really doing things and learning by doing. Okay, and then the master program. I'm leading one master program here in international business management. A little bit, I show my background, but it was already introduced a little bit. And then orientation to the topic. So this is Finland, very cold country. And actually this year, Finland is going to celebrate 100 years of its independence from the Russian rule. Okay, there are other picture, the Nordic Lights, probably you heard about that. And then this is a very typical view because there are many lakes and forest everywhere. And then we have these animals as well, so very common. Okay, actually there was a team created, and they were thinking about what are the main characteristics of Finland as a brand, as a country brand, and then defined 3 items. First item was the nature, because we have those lakes, forests, and so on. The other item was functionality. So the society is very well organized. Everything functions very well. The public transportation functions very well because of cold weather. So the time schedules are really they keep the time schedule very well, the buses and the trains. And guess what was the third dimension? Any idea? So nature, functionality, education. Education was the third one. So education is the third dimension of the Finland as a country brand. So my university, hopefully.
It is in Helsinki, one of the most connected cities on earth, that we prepare professionals for business. Welcome to Haaga-Helia University of Applied Sciences.
This is Haaga-Helia. Let's take a look.
Haaga-Helia University of Applied Sciences work closely with leading businesses at nearly 200 universities worldwide. Our focus for innovation, research and development are service and sales, development of new business models, and information technology.
It is here at one of Finland's premier universities that you can study to become an expert in business management, travel, journalism, information technology, tourism, sports and leisure management, or hospitality and restaurant management. Haaga-Helia's 120-year legacy of cooperating with business ensures that our students are involved in interesting projects from real business life.
IBMA cooperates with Haaga-Helia in areas such as education, research, recruitment. And the focus in our cooperation is in education, meaning we create joint curriculum, have lectures, and also provide students with interims and jobs. Haaga-Helia gives students both theoretical framework, hands-on tools, and competencies.
Haaga-Helia has business focus in the field that I'm studying, especially with the companies that we are involved, Microsoft and Accenture. They are interacting like together. We have seminars that Accenture is having, and we are visiting Accenture.
With all the sports we do, there's really that practical side, and with all the opportunities they do give us. I mean, last year I myself got to go to Germany to be involved with the World Championship hockey tournament, and that in itself is huge. And being able to get that opportunity through schooling was great.
Our
Okay, thank you for your attention. I thought that this very brief video introduced Finland and the university very well. So very briefly about my background. I spent 9 years in business and then 20 years in education. And as it was introduced, I have an MBA and 2 PhD degrees. And then these are my contact information, so if someone would like to read more. Orientation to the topic. Actually, these 3 circles shows you that higher education could be very well connected with research and consulting. And how it's going to happen, I'm going to show you now the topic, the appreciative inquiry topic. So first of all, we need to start this presentation with an ontological question. What is an organization? And they, as we know, there are different views about organizations. Organizations could be defined differently. And these are the authors I would like to refer very briefly in my presentation. So in 1965, this was the picture of an organization. Every organization should have those 4 basic items. They should have a goal. They should have a social structure. They need people, they need participants, and they need technology, the infrastructure. So it means there is a human capital, there is an organizational capital, and also the relational capital, which is the social structure and relationship. But the goal is really critical. Okay, during the time organization theory has developed and how people viewed organizations has developed. So in first, organizations were seen as closed and rational systems. And then later on, they were seen as closed and natural models, open, rational. And now, today, we are talking about organizations as open, natural models and evolving, and they are in constant change and constant development. And there are several theories about that. So Morgan, for example, viewed organizations this way. There are 8 different views of organizations. But in my presentation, I would like to focus on this flux and transformation and constant change of an organization. Kia viewed organizations as word-making, the aggregate unintended outcome of local efforts, and as an island of the relative stabilized order in a sea of chaos and flux. So, and organizations are also products of sense-making. Manuel Castells wrote his book, very famous book about the information age, and he defined organizations. Networks are the fundamental stuff, so the relational aspect of organization is very critical today. Fonseca also, very important. He talks about, he relates complexity theories to the organization, complexity and innovation in organization, and he defined organizations as temporary successful patterns of interactions. I don't like to read my slides because I think you can read yourself, so it's not the meaning of reading the slides, but just referring to those authors, you know, who were defining organizations. Wenger defined organizations as formal and informal, but he also said that nothing will happen in formal organizations. We need the informal stuff in order to happen. We need the communities of practice because the real work happens there in the informal part of the organizations. Heckscher and Adler talked about different types of communities, probably familiar for you. So they talked about the firm as a collaborative community. And then collaborative community is the number 3 form of organizations based on this literature. And these are the characteristics of a collaborative community. They defined that trust based on contribution, concern, honesty, and collegiality. Trust is really important in collaboration and collaborative community. Organization as an organic division of labor coordinated by conscious collaboration. And number 3 characteristic is identities that are interdependent, interactive, and have social character. So firm or organization as a collaborative community. This is the main definition based on Heckscher and Adler. Basically, organizations and how we view organizations, there is a debate between constructivism and positivism. And in appreciative inquiry, we are following the constructivism approach because for us, or as we see organizations are complex systems. They are not static. They are changing all the time. So we talk about the becoming ontology as a concept when we talk about organizations and how we perceive it in action research and in appreciative inquiry. And organizations cannot be designed beforehand, as it was assumed by the positivism philosophy or approach. So very fast introduction to appreciative inquiry as type of action research. The roots of appreciative inquiry are in positive psychology, as you know. So I find this quotation very, very interesting and very useful, maybe for you as well, who are doing research. Shane and Lopez said that over the last 2 decades, we have realized that to understand humans, we have to make sense of things like joy, hope, and love. I know it's for engineers and other scientists, it would be difficult to understand, but we have to do that. There is so much for researchers and practitioners to do to demystify the positive side of life. That will keep us busy for centuries. So we need to think of the positive things of organizations. Standpoint of appreciative inquiry are that appreciative inquiry is a form of social construction in action, and also constructivism, as I told you. The organizations perceived as construction and evolving and in constant change. So why positive psychology important when we do research and we approach developing organizations? Because if we ask questions about problems, we create a reality of problems. However, if we ask questions about what works or what gives life to a community or an organization or to a group or to a person, we participate in the construction of reality of potential. What could be better done? So appreciative inquiry requires a shift in your mindset and in your thinking. You don't focus on problems. They are problems, of course, to be solved, but you don't focus on problems. You focus on the good and positive things. What gives life to the organization, and what are the strengths and the values of the organizations? Okay, there is a comparison between problem-solving mindset and also the appreciative knowledge-sharing mindset. And as you can see, there are huge differences. So knowledge-sharing as a problem to be solved in problem-solving However, in appreciative inquiry, knowledge sharing as an opportunity to embrace and to develop. It's an opportunity. Here, we appreciate or we value what we are good at and what exists and what we are doing well. And also identify knowledge enablers, what makes people share knowledge. Why do people share knowledge? Instead of in problem solving, we identify knowledge sharing. There is a mistake, but anyway, problems, what makes people hoard or keep knowledge. Knowledge as a power, so they should keep the knowledge, not share the knowledge. But here about sharing and collaborating and developing together something new. There are other characteristics as well. In problem solving, people are looking for what is missing, what needs to be added. But here we are looking what exists and what we need to develop. Focus and goals of appreciative inquiry. Okay, it's social relationships, human interactions are really important in appreciative inquiry. And appreciative inquiry can generate new knowledge, can generate new understanding while we do this research and while we focus on communities and organizations or individuals. And it can transform and develop organizations. Appreciative inquiry has become also very popular in consulting business for organizational development. This process, defined by Touch and Carey and Crowdy, has 8 steps of appreciative inquiry. Appreciative inquiry is a qualitative research, and as you know, qualitative research is quite messy because we are dealing with people and undefined, unclear information and mainly interviews and text and so on. It's quite messy. It's a messy process. But this kind of steps, so if you follow those steps, can help you to structure your thinking and then accomplish this appreciative inquiry. Actually, this was the feedback from my students as well, my master students who did this project, that it's really helped them to do qualitative research and action research, to following just those clear steps. You see here, there are different colors. The first three steps mean what is. So it's about the exploration, exploring what is good, what exists, what exists. And then the yellow color means what might be. Those steps, 3 steps. And the last steps are about what could be and also what will be. So we are following this 4D cycle in appreciative inquiry. You see here, first there is discovery, appreciate what is, and then we are dreaming, imagining what might be, and then designing what should be, and then finally we create what will be. So we are focusing on the future and creating propositions for the future. Okay, there are sources for you. So the slides will be available for you if you would like to have it later on. But number 3 point in my presentation is sharing the experiences of my students, what they did. My students are master students. They are middle managers, and they are working full-time and studying part-time. So they come back to do their masters in international business management. So they formed a groups at the beginning of the research course, applied research course of 4 or 5 students. And then they selected one organization of one student who is more accessible and available for this kind of exploration. So sometimes it helps the students to have access to the organization. Okay, and then the students altogether, this project had been given to the students 4 years, in consequence 4 years, and then altogether they made, they explored 29 different organizations in Finland, and then they made interviews. Because in my course, in applied research course, it's very difficult to teach qualitative research. You just have to do it in order to learn. So this was a very good project for my students to learn how to make interviews, how to transcribe, record, analyze, and report, and also have access to the organization and convince the management that this is a good thing for them, and so on. So it was a very good learning process for them. So as you can see here, some of the organizations I listed, they were like small, they were large or medium-sized, different type of organizations. They were consulting firms, they were like bigger firms like Nokia Siemens Networks, Nokia. If there was a larger organizations, like for example, at that time, Nokia was very big and very popular, not nowadays, but that time, yes. I suggested students to focus on one department only, or one team, or one smaller division of the organization. And then there are some banks or consulting companies involved, international companies involved, and so on. So it was really wide range of organizations. The students followed these 8 steps of appreciative inquiry in their research. I asked them to write a very brief report, which means 10 pages. 4 or 5 students, and they were, at the beginning, they were so happy, you know, like, we need to write only 10 pages. And I said, okay, it's harder to write a short report than a long one. But they realized that later on. I told them the report should be 10, maximum 12, 15, or 15 was the maximum pages. And then, of course, literature and appendices. Appendices were unlimited number of appendices, because I expected them that they will demonstrate the transcript of the interviews and also the analysis of the interviews. Okay, so they went through this process. They had 2 rounds of interviews. I suggested them to have 10 plus 10 interviews. So for a team, it's easy, because then they approached one organization and they just divided, like everyone did 2 or 3 interviews. It was okay. But then came the problem of analyzing, so, and transcribing. It's very hard work. However, today we have the software for that, what can translate the voice to a text, so it's okay. But I wanted them to have this hard way of learning, you know, putting them into this situation, going there. First, I told them, you have to read the literature. You have to get familiar with the theory of appreciative inquiry and the process and so on. And they read it. I was there willing to consult with them, so I took the consultant role in this process. And then I was available, so they could contact me anytime if they had problems in Teams or they needed my support, so it's okay. And they did, actually, some of the teams did, contacted, and they asked how to analyze the data, the textual data, and so on. So this is the process they did. The first round interviews, that's what they learned. So first, they learned how to contact the organization, how to sell the idea of the project. And then Also, they learned how to design the questionnaire or the questions they would like to ask, and then how to conduct the interviews, how to record it, how to have questions which will have only positive side, not going to problem solving and asking people about the existing problems, but what works in the organization. So what are the life-giving forces? They needed to find out that. And then they needed to identify 3 or 4 life-giving forces. I suggested them to use Touch and Carey and Crowdy had a very good book about appreciative inquiry, and then they defined simple questions what to ask. For example, this is one question for the first round. So you can ask a person to think about a time when they shared something with other people, and then which enabled them to achieve success, what helped them to get better work. It could be something giving to your colleague a book or suggesting some ideas, etc., whatever. And then they ask them, describe such an event when you felt the most alive, excited, valued, and appreciated. So you see here that focus on the positive side. And there are many questions. I suggested them to follow these Touch and Carey questions because actually the purpose that they do it, and then they see the results or the outcomes. So for example, this is the result. This team analyzed or did the appreciative inquiry first round interviews for a bank. It was a bank. So they identified all these supporting, life-giving forces. There were many coming from the interviews and from the text that they conducted. And then they needed to analyze and then put together or group those life-giving forces into, or maybe conceptualize or putting them into groups. Like, for example, what are these life-giving forces? There are many things here could be put into one group. For example, they decided to have these 3 groups, like motivation and personal drive came out from the first round interviews, and then people, working atmosphere, and then cooperation and teamwork. So they derived from the interviews these 3 life-giving forces. And then basically they compared also with the company values, because every organization and every company has their own values announced on web pages or blah, blah, you know that. But how it's internalized, is it true that these are the real values or not? So it can provide some kind of validation for the outcomes. If there is a correlation between what they defined and what the organization has announced as values, then probably it's a good thing. Okay, the second round interviews they conducted focusing on those 3 or 4 identified life-giving forces, and they went a little bit deeper. So they learned this kind of things. Yes. Okay. For example, if teamwork as a life-giving force was identified at the beginning, then it could be asked in the second round, that telling the person that many of your colleagues mentioned that teamwork is really good here. So could you please tell why teamwork is good? What makes teamwork really works well? And then what are the factors or conditions to facilitate this good teamwork? So going a little bit deeper into these life-giving forces. And then the categorization of this comes. which means the life-giving forces should be related to organizational factors or organizational elements. So there is a matrix with organizational factors like structure, communication, leadership, communication, incentives, or practices. And then here, the identified life-giving forces. And then they grouped into this matrix again. So this is also an analytical work. They did it together. Next, they created a possibility proposition, like what could be developed or what could be done better. And then these are the possibility propositions by the team. It's a very creative work when they need to look at one of these life-giving force and organizational factor, and then they need to give improvements or ideas how it could be done better. So for example, leadership, and then cooperation and teamwork. What leadership can do to reinforce, to make better cooperation and teamwork. And then they put like communicate clear targets, give continuous and constructive feedback. So that leadership could do. For example, I did myself also appreciative inquiry, and then they could be a very simple solutions or very simple propositions. For example, having a free coffee time for employees or for teachers, for example, in a coffee room in a certain day and certain time when teachers could come and collaborate. So it's very simple. Simple things can improve collaboration. Okay. So these are the findings of my students' appreciative inquiry. In 2007, you can see here, they identified the life-giving forces of organizations like teamwork, helping others, and the atmosphere, the collegiality, all these positive things. We need to focus on these positive ideas, what we have, and good things. Okay, next year, they identified very similar things: motivation, collaboration, growth, collegiality, and so on. Passion, success. So all these items are very, very important. And every organization has something good and something positive they should focus on and develop further. This is next year. You see similar things evolved. Working environment, professionalism. These are the life-giving forces, yeah. Team spirit, knowledge, and so on. Yes. Thank you. So this is the paper. You can read more about these items or this appreciative inquiry if you want. And now I would like to conclude really. This is the conclusion that, as I mentioned to you, that we are focusing on research, consulting, and education. So these appreciative inquiry projects helped my students to learn research methods, research methodology, because they conducted research themselves. It helped them consulting. It developed their consulting skills because they approached the organizations and they provided presentations, also the findings to the organization. And then also they did research and consulting work. But this was the main purpose, that master students really acting as researchers and consultants, and they are learning by doing things. So putting them into this confusing and unclear situation, and they find their own way how to manage and how to learn. Okay, going back to the assignment I gave you at the beginning. So what do you think? Who is the most well-known Finnish person? Yes? Jan Sibelius. Any other ideas?
You're the only
Pardon? Björk is Swedish?
You're the only Finnish person I know. You.
No, no, definitely not.
I got one more.
Yes?
Never Lima.
Oh. More? Guess? Who's the most well-known? Everybody knows it.
Pavel Nurmi? Way back.
We are over.
Yeah.
Okay, is it
No,
him?
I have no idea.
Suomi. Suomi in Finnish means Finland. So it's an ice hockey player. Teemu Selänne played in Canada as well. Yeah, but this is the most well-known person. I really want to know. Everybody knows Santa Claus, so we have that.
Let's thank the speaker.